that occur in our industry. I want to use this opportunity to appeal to our respective management teams to release their CAEs to attend this all-important training. Also, in the course of today, we shall be delving into an equally important topic: open banking, emerging risk, and review of API security. Open banking is ushering in a new era of financial innovation, but with that innovation comes exposure. As banks open their systems to third-party providers, we must rigorously examine the attendant risk, especially around data privacy, identity management, and API integrity. Our discussion will help us understand how to balance innovation with control and collaboration with caution. In conclusion, I encourage us all to engage fully, share insights, ask the tough questions, and live here with practical tools and renewed focus. Together, we are not just custodians of audit frameworks, we are enablers of trust, stability, and resilience in Nigeria's banking sector. Once again, I welcome you all warmly to this remarkable meeting. I look forward to a robust and enriching session ahead. Thank you, and may our deliberations be fruitful.
Good morning, colleagues, and welcome once again. I'm here to introduce the Managing Director of Taj Bank. It's going to be ably represented by the Chairman of the Board Audit Committee, Mr. Adekunle James Awe. I will now go through the profile of the MD of Taj Bank. Ami Joda is a seasoned banker with over 20 years banking experience covering treasury, business development, retail banking, branch banking, and public sector. He began his career at Niger Insurance PLC in 1999 before moving to City Express Bank Limited in Lagos. In the same year, he held the position of senior supervisor. He also worked at Continental Trust Bank Limited in Kano as a senior analyst, and at the defunct Oceanic Bank also. He also worked in International Nigeria Limited. Oceanic Bank International Nigeria Limited. Okay. He was the pioneer branch manager of Fidelity Bank PLC, Kano, from where he rose to the position of area manager. His extensive experience led him to the First Inland Bank in Abuja, where he worked as a retail banking head. He later rose to become the divisional head retail banking in the bank. Ami Joda was the divisional head public sector in First City Monument Bank. His qualification: he holds a BSc in Business Administration from the University of Maiduguri and an MBA from Bayero University in Kano. He is also a member of Chartered Institute of Bankers of Nigeria. Mr. Ami Joda is the founder and managing director and the chief executive officer of Taj Bank Limited. He led the team to realize the vision of setting up the second non-interest banking in Nigeria. It's going to be ably represented by Mr. Adekunle Awe, who has over 21 years experience in the financial sector that spans in experience in internal control, internal audit, banking operations, business process review, and compliance. He was the head of compliance of the First City Monument Bank, FCMB. Prior to joining FCMB, he was the divisional head, internal control, and the acting chief compliance officer of Finbank PLC. He also previously worked at First Inland Bank PLC as the divisional head of internal control. Adekunle Awe has a master's in business administration with specialization in human capital management from the Lagos State University. He also holds HND in accountancy from the Lagos State Polytechnic. He is a fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria, an associate member of Institute of Management, and a certified fraud manager. He is presently serving with Taj Bank as the chairman of the board audit committee. Please, let's give him a rounding welcome.
Let there be light. Let there be light. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm happy to be here this morning, and I'm happy to be in the midst of my colleagues. And I can see some faces that that I recognize there. I can see some veterans in the house. So it's my pleasure to be in your midst. I said it's my pleasure to be in your midst, gentlemen. Yeah. I'm just going to present the address of the MD, CEO of Taj Bank. Distinguished chairperson of AKIBIM, please permit me if I didn't get the acronyms well. Members of the executive committee, respected chief audit executives, senior executives and stakeholders in the banking and financial services sectors, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I bring you warm greetings and best wishes from Mr. Amit Joda, the Managing Director, CEO of Taj Bank Limited, who is unavoidably not here due to unexpected circumstances. He has, however, asked me to convey his unwavering support for AKIBIM and to share a few thoughts on this timely and critical theme, strengthening cyber resilience, the auditor's role in preventing financial system breaches. It is my honor and privilege to represent him at this 61st quarterly general meeting of the Association of Chief Audit Executive of Banks in Nigeria, an association that continues to serve as a vanguard for audit excellence, ethical leadership, and systemic integrity in our banking sector, whose members, as vigilant professionals, play a vital role in preserving the trust and integrity of our banking system. Today's financial landscape is increasingly digital, borderless, and vulnerable. Cyber threats are no longer hypothetical. They are real, aggressive, and becoming more sophisticated. Whether it's ransomware, locking access to entire network, phishing scam, draining customers' account, or insiders breaches compromising sensitive customer data, the landscape has changed. The question we must ask ourselves is simple but sobering. Are our internal audit functions adequately prepared not only to detect cyber breaches, but also proactive to prevent them? This is a question all of us in this room must ask ourselves. Traditionally, the auditor's toolkit was equipped to detect financial anomalies and ensure compliance. Today, however, these same auditors must interrogate firewall logs, assess system penetration, vulnerabilities, audit the digital onboarding journey, and understand cloud risk profiles. The tools have changed, the terrain has shifted, and the adversary are evolving. An internal auditor is no longer just a watchdog for financial processes. In today's digital landscape, the internal auditor is a technology risk assessor, a cyber hygiene advocate, a digital governance examiner, a business continuity watchdog, and more importantly, a partner in digital trust. Cyber resilience is not only a matter of IT department, it's now a critical pillar of enterprise-wide risk management. And the internal audit function is the conscience of that structure. Coming from a non-interest banking tradition where values of trust and justice, transparency, shared risk, and ethical compliance are foundational, I speak with conviction that cyber risk in our context is doubly concerning. Our model of banking rests on moral and reputational capital. A single breach not only exposes us to operational risk, it challenges the very trust that underpins our legitimacy. Therefore, our approach must be proactive, not reactive, audacious, not just compliant, aligned with Sharia principles, but also grounded in cutting-edge digital security. This is why auditors are central, not peripheral, to any serious conversation about cyber resilience. Distinguished colleagues, We must rise beyond the checkbox mindset. Strengthen cyber resilience demands 1. Continuous training and retooling of auditors in cybersecurity fundamentals as upskilling internal auditors on cybersecurity framework such as NIST, ISO, IEC 27001 and COVID 2019 is no longer negotiable. And I recall when the chairperson was delivering her speech when I came in, she underscored the importance of training, and the need for executive, for banks to support that. Collaboration with IT risk managers and compliance teams without compromising independence. Championing enterprise risk culture that treats cyber threats as business risk, not IT risk. Embedding cyber audit procedures in the annual risk-based audit. Ensuring KPIs and audit report reflects cyber readiness and system integrity. Collaborating with CBN, NDIC, and NITDA to shape forward-looking policies that enable effective cyber assurance. We must rise to the moment, not with fear, but with foresight, not with formality, but with grit and determination. While I conclude, the difference between a cyber breach and cyber resilience is anticipation, and that is what internal auditors are uniquely positioned to deliver. In the battlefield of cyber threats, we are not passive observers. We are not mere reporters. We are defenders. We are enablers of trust. We are architects of resilience. Let us take that responsibility seriously, boldly, and urgently. Distinguished colleagues, friends, fellow guardians of financial trusts, I bring this message with a deep sense of duty and commitment, not only to institutional integrity, but to national financial stability. And so, on behalf of Mr. Amit Jordan, and in the spirit of collaboration, resilience, and professional excellence, I hereby formally declare this quarterly general meeting of Association of Chief Audit Executives of Banks in Nigeria open. May our conversation be frank, our knowledge shares generously, and our resolve fortified for the challenges ahead. Thank you. God bless Akaibim, God bless Taj Bank, and God bless Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Wow. Wow. And I'll say wow again. I want to thank you very much, sir. Colleagues, if we listen very carefully, I'm sure you would want copies of this speech. We'll need it because it has so many things for us to take away. But I'll just quickly pinpoint a few of them. What we have heard this morning is that the internal auditor is a technology risk assessor, a cyber hygiene advocate, a data governance examiner, a business continuity watchdog, and more importantly, a partner in the digital trust. I believe that is sinking very well. And then the next thing is that, you see, when we are no more peripheral, we cannot be peripheral anymore. We are central to all the conversations about cyber resilience. Thank you very much, sir. As you concluded with this comment, for me, the biggest takeaway that says that we must be enablers. We are not passive observers. We are no more just reporters. Just let me do my report. We are now defenders, enablers of trust. We are architects of resilience. Architects of resilience. And so we must take that responsibility very seriously, boldly, and very importantly, urgently. This is a call for us this morning, and I know we would want to deliberate, think about the charge, and have deeper conversation. Once more, sir, I thank you very much. So at this point, would want to take questions. Patrick, are you there? Questions or comments on what we have heard this morning? So please, if you have any comments or any question, let's have your hand up. Where is the second microphone? Any question? I can't see any hand up. Okay, there's a hand.
Good morning, colleagues. First of all, I want to appreciate Tide Bank and of course, Mr. Amit Joda, ably represented by the chairman Audit Committee, and of course Femi Jegede. Thank you so much for putting this together. The charges are noted, and of course those imperatives to be on the forefront, the need for urgency and the need to step out bold are well taken, and of course we are seeing it in our respective forte. I think it's important also for us to take back this for our colleagues and the people that are under our charge. As we read their reports, as we monitor them, it's important for us to note especially what concerns me, which has been highlighted, very unique report or unique address, which is that let us not just be reporters. I mean, reporting is just for the old school auditors. It is imperative for us to know that the cyber threats and the landscape has changed significantly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Wale. Round of applause for him, please. Any more comments, questions as we look at this?
Thank you very much, sir, for the presentation. I would want to say that, you know, everywhere so much is expected of auditors. Auditors need to be this, auditors need to be that. You need to know more than the processors, the process owners. We are charged with so many responsibilities. And I'm so glad that you are the chairperson of the audit committee. I would want to appreciate a situation where audit committees are able to push for the auditors. We have so much expectations, but are we really considered in the bank's budget for trainings as much as the process owners? It would be nice when the board also is pushing for auditors to be recognized in all these areas and we get all the trainings and support that are required. Thank you very much.
You want to make a comment, sir?
Thank you very much. I wouldn't know whether that was a question or a comment anyway. But or maybe a takeaway, right? Yeah. The truth of the matter is you cannot give what you don't have. Yeah. So, and it's important if those enormous responsibilities would have to be performed, then we can't shy away from having effective trainings for all those that are on that line. You know, just like the business people are being sent on training, the defense lines, not just even the audit teams, controls, internal controls, you know, and even operation teams, because these are the defense lines, you know, in operational processes. So everybody must have to attend requisite training that will enable them to perform. So that is taking sorry, let me just say, yeah, that is taking. And well, in Taj Bank, I think we do that. You know, we push for that training. And where we don't get this, because the CAEs, they report to the audit committee, and the need for that rapport, that closeness between the CAE, that's the chief audit executive, and the chairman audit cannot be overemphasized. You know, such that if there's a pushback from the executive, then a subtle manner, the audit chair can push that forward. That will be my suggestion to all the chief audit executives that are here today. You know, walk through, if you can't get directly through to your chief executive, walk through the chairman, and I'm sure that would pave way. But that point is well taken. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. So you're hearing from the horse's mouth, actually. We need to develop the relationship with our BAC chairs. You know, it's very important. He has told us now. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you, Taj Bank. Thank you, CAE, for putting this together. Very, very insightful. One thing that really stuck with me is that we should be architects of resilience. In fact, I'm going to keep that at the head of my, and that also further reinforce our academy in Akaibim. We are building an academy, and from what you have just said now, most of the thought process that we guide that academy will be IT related, cyber security, and the rest of them. Thank you once again. Thank you.
Any more? Any more comments, please? I can't see any. So at this juncture, I'll call on Mr. Mobishe Ashagbade. I hope I got the surname correct. Mobishe, please.
Okay, honestly, I must confess, when I was told that the chairman of board audit committee was coming to address us, I conjured an image of one elderly, white hair, gray hair, you know, because most of the chairman of board audit committees that I've seen are always elderly people. So we are so delighted to have a very young man heading a board audit committee of a bank coming to address us this morning. And from his presentation, you can really see that he could relate very well with what we usually do. And want to appreciate you, sir. So on behalf of the Association of Chief Audit Executive of Banks Nigeria, we want to sincerely appreciate you for your time and your presentation this morning. The contents were very, very insightful, and we took out a lot of salient points that will really help us. It's Jerome that said, if you work hard on your job, you are going to make a living. But if you work hard on yourself, you are going to make a fortune. So you've taught us to develop ourselves today so that we'll develop those skills that we'll use on the job to enable us make a fortune in our life. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are making progress. Patrick, when are we doing the photo session? So find out now. We are making progress. We'll go into presentations now, and then we'll be having the first presentation on the theme of this QGM, believing that our chief host is still very much with us. Sir, believing that you're still very much with us. Okay, thank you. So very quickly, we'll go to the presentation on the theme of this event, and that will be handled by the manager, cyber risk and privacy in KPMG Nigeria, Ripson Uguzo. When I talk now, you people will say, this is Ripson. Ripson is a gift of fidelity to the industry. A gift of fidelity to the industry. We have a lot of gifts that fidelity has been given to the industry. So Ripson, I hope he's here. Is that what? That what? Oh, no, not at all. Okay, so it's not looking like he has arrived yet, and so we make progress. So while we're waiting for Ripson on that presentation, we'll take the next one, still by KPMG. I'll need a confirmation that they are here, please. I need a confirmation that to me is here. Okay. Who are the they? Is Tumi here? Is Ripson here? Please, if they're here, can they come up? KPMG, we're waiting. Patrick. Ripson, we have called your name, oh, And I boasted that you are a gift. And they say, is it absenteeism part of it? And so what happened now? Oh my. So sorry about that. So sorry. So you can see that it's truly a gift. So Ripson will take us on our first session on the theme. Like I said, he's the manager, cyber and privacy, KPMG. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, everyone. So maybe we'll get started with the. Okay, so my job here today is really very simple. The idea is to help us sort of relook the audit function, right? And as we relook it, reimagine it, and see how two very closely related verticals can relate together, and how we can embed one function into the other that allows us to accelerate our audit process in such a way that we then begin to deal with the emerging issues, right? So if you look at cybersecurity and then if you look at audit, right, they're closely related, right? So the idea for today's, what about the slide? So the idea for today, first of all, is to look at what existing threat vectors that we are currently experiencing within the cybersecurity space, and then we'll also go and look at what are the key trends or key events that happened pre-COVID and after COVID, right? And how, looking at the lens from 5 key themes to see how the audit team has related with cybersecurity, that function, how they have related, using 6 key themes. So my team looked at, developed 6 key strategic themes that will allow us to understand, either from a talent perspective, either from a strategic perspective, either from a data technology perspective, how has the audit team and the cybersecurity team fared, right? And what is the ongoing pressure that is being faced from the audit team. And then we'll look at talent. Talent is becoming something that is really important, right? Talent has become a new metaphor within that space. And how do we then deal with the issues around talent? And then we'll then proceed with key considerations. Those considerations are the things that you should have in mind as Chief Audit Executive. What should be top of your mind, right? What should be top of your mind? And that is one of the what we'll close out the session with. So I don't know how long would it take us to get started? Huh? Okay, so I would start very, very quickly to start to talk about. So, from a threat vector perspective, what we have seen is that there is, because of the advent of artificial intelligence, right? There's been a large proliferation of data, an explosion of data, right? Because of the explosion or proliferation of data, what we have seen is that intelligence is now within our fingertips, right? So because intelligence is within our fingertips, I'll just give you a scenario. If hypothetically I am a threat actor or a fraudulent person, I can go to GitHub today and say, I want to download a large language model or a sub-domain large language model, right? And GitHub will give me a link. I'll download that. If I have an NVIDIA card, right, a graphical card that enables my memory, I have that installed into my laptop, right? With those 2 elements, I can create a GPT model that is different from ChatGPT, but the difference is that it has its morals switched off. And then I'll ask the question, how do I bypass my end of day process today in the banking environment? How do I bypass it? Once I ask that GPT model that, it will give me all the information, how I'm going to write the script. I will tell it I'm an auditor. I will tell it I'm a EOD. end of day or end of day personnel. I'll tell you the kind of privilege that I have. And it would give me a line by line step as to how I can bypass all your controls. And this is the kind of risk that I think should be top of mind. Do I have your attention? Yeah. So this is the kind of risk that I think should be top of mind. And the question is, how then do we address this current gaps? How long is it going to take? Right. So how then do we address this current gap? So from a phishing perspective, if I want to gain entry point into your environment, and I have that language model that is turned off, because without language model, I can connect it to the deep web or dark web, whichever one, and it will learn with terabytes of data that as much data that you have the ChatGPT and the DeepSeek has, right? So how do I create a ransomware? I would understand the kind of security solutions that you have. Probably interact with your cybersecurity people. I ask them what kind of SIEM do you have, SIEM solutions do you have. They'll tell me that FortiGate or whatever it is, one big name like that. I get the information and I'll impute it into that model, and I can use that to create ransomwares, malwares, call it anything, or even look at your information assets. What kind of core banking are you using? What are the vulnerable elements of your SAP? And with that, I have clarity as to how to bring that thing. So these are the kind of threats that I think you're being faced with. And then the question is, how then do we address? Sorry, I need my slide to be able to, connect very quickly. So, if I'm then creating a phishing mail, I can create a phishing mail leveraging the vulnerabilities that exist with your current Outlook, and then an email is coming from your boss. Just take, for instance, if an email is coming from an executive director or is coming from the CAE, please grant access to or something, and there is that email is coming in such a way that shows that this thing is valid, right? Because I've exploited certain vulnerabilities within your Outlook environment. Just imagine if I pass that kind of phishing email to someone who has privileged access. What then happens? I'll be able to excavate his username, his password, and then I can, do a lot of things. Yeah. Yeah. Well, firewall. Firewall all depends on if the entry points, the traffic coming in is legitimate. For instance, if I want to enter into your environment, right? I can. There are several entry points. I can, within my own laptop, right, install some of these solutions that I am talking about. For instance, if I have an admin right control over my local laptop, I can download an LLM, right, that can do what I have done, that can do what I have said, all right. So, but the idea is that if you have existing controls beyond the firewall that is able to identify that you have such kind of AI model sort of running within your environment that is not whitelisted or that has been blacklisted, right? And then you can be able to identify that, right? But also too, if I'm also entering your environment through maybe a phishing attack, for instance, I'll be entering through your own credentials, and then because it's legitimate, yeah, you won't have the firewall this thing. So it's sort of using what we perceive as legitimate to sort of gain entry into your own environment. So is the slide ready? So I don't know. So I don't know how to proceed without my slides. How long is? Or do we have any questions? Yeah, so that we can make the session interactive. Yeah. Yes.
in terms of most people work from home. So firewall might not be the first thing you should think about in terms of cybersecurity attack, because for people that work from home, you can't necessarily put firewall on their own network. So it's only maybe within your environment, within the office space, that it's easier to put firewall and all that. So for things like that, I would say more of awareness is very, very important than even going towards firewall. Basically.
Yes. So literacy and awareness is one of our golden rules for today. But when he's talking about firewall, I'm thinking that he's thinking about the entire security, inline security infrastructure that you have to sort of, how is it that I'm able to use this sort of solution to bypass the overall security infrastructure. I think that's where his question is coming from, right? But thanks for the context also too. So if we look at the slide, right, there are key events that have happened across since 20. Okay.
I wanted to add a little bit too.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me just take this one. So I wanted to add a little bit too, but am I audible? Okay.
Can you hear me? It's not so loud. Is it loud? Okay. I just wanted to address what she said. She talked about the fact that people work from home, and because of that, the firewall may not necessarily be able to address that. But I wanted to more or less point out that before such people who work from home are allowed on the network, there's something called a VPN, which is a virtual access that they're given. So the expectation is that the bank would ensure that there is no unnecessary vulnerability or unauthorized access through the VPN. So that is important. So it's not necessarily as much as a firewall in that regards, but the access they have to the network, and you have to make sure that you have control over who has access and when they're logging on, because the cybersecurity and all of that, the vulnerabilities can actually come through those access. Thank you.
Okay. So every time we talk about cybersecurity, we talk about cybersecurity from two perspectives: the legitimate user and the guy who is the external threat actor, right? So this perspective now is that we're stimulating the insider threat, right? Who is probably advanced and sort of leveraging intelligence to exploit the environment. So, well, but thanks for the context also too.
Yes, I just want to also add a little bit to the conversation, right? Firewalls, to an extent, I know the answers so far are right on point, right? The thing with firewall is, as good as it is, right? Most of the ones deployed within our markets today in Nigeria are rule-based, but the threats that Ripson is describing are threats that can circumvent rules, right? So for the number one, we've seen some of our customers have started even moving towards artificial intelligence based firewalls. That yes, you can simulate new threats, right? However, there should be platforms that can also adapt to some of those threats, right? Almost in real time. So that's part one. But the other thing that we should also say, and I'm sure Ripson will touch on, is the fact that security and cybersecurity is actually vast, right? Is multi-layered, and when you think about security for an organization, it has to be across all those many layers. And maybe one of the ways to simplify it is something called zero trust architecture, where you trust no one, you don't even trust the legitimate user. You assume every action is potentially a threat. And how you go about securing the organization or monitoring or checking everything that's happening then derives from that assumption. And to also just slightly touch on the working from home, part of what also must be done, like I said, security is multi-layered, right? There's things called endpoint security, where you can't just install anything on a laptop, right, except what has been permitted by the organization. Right, And the question will now be, what's the role of internal auditors when it comes to that kind of landscape? It's a broad conversation that we can continue to have, but maybe that might take us a little away from the agenda for today. But certainly we are more than ready to have those conversations.
Yeah, thank you very much, Simi. So, so that sort of begs the question, because when you talk about people coming to access for certain things, especially now, you hear that someone wants to install something that relates to AI model or something, and then we need to also really be careful. So, if you look at the key events across 2020 to 2025, you would see that it all started. This whole hype started with COVID-19, and then we had the work from home, like she said, the transition to work from home, and then we started having the increased cybersecurity warfare, right? Increased attack. Then we started having introduction of things like ML models that relates to either regression models or supervised, unsupervised, reinforcement learning. Then the transition all then went to deep learning, and then the advent of generative AI. Then from generative AI, we started seeing, then came the proliferation of overall intelligence, right? Why it is critical for us in banking is that the banking space has massive amount of data. And what is important about the data is not just the data, is the overall intelligence that you can get from the data. There is a massive amount of intelligence, and securing and governing your data really is very, very important. Then we move to the acts, the various regulations that came in, right? And AI enabled threats. So we are seeing that every threat that we are seeing before has now developed some form of intelligence that makes it AI enabled. And then now, ever increasing more, this AI and cybersecurity, two verticals, are then impacting the overall landscape. So if we look at the 5 lenses that I spoke about, right? So what we did was to categorize it into 5 themes. Now, if you look at strategy and leadership, you'll discover that in 2020, right, auditors started engaging cybersecurity teams a lot more, right? They started understanding that this thing is a problem, and they started engaging. They were engaging them before, right? But they started engaging them a lot more, and then this gradually then shifts to audit team then prioritizing it. Before, their focus was in having a lot of branch control team members, it was around financial risk, what happens in the vault and all that. But you see that risk now is sort of changing, and then they started reprioritizing that and focusing more on how cybersecurity risk is then becoming material. Then the evolution then is now where the audit committee, the board, because cybersecurity has become top of mind for the CEOs, the top concerns, what are part of the top concerns for them? Cybersecurity. The audit team is now under immense pressure to provide assurance as to the readiness of the overall cybersecurity posture and how the cybersecurity team is set up from a strategic perspective, right? So then, if you look at it from the lens of talent and people, there's a saying that they say people is powerful, right? And we'll also dive a bit into that concept. So the audit team started upskilling, right? That's the evolution. They started upskilling and learning a whole lot about cybersecurity, and then started to bridge the gap. Then the whole jackpot thing came, and now there is a huge gap. There is a huge persistent gap, right? 2 gaps in 2 areas. One is the knowledge in cybersecurity for cybersecurity personnel and for audit personnel, and also the understanding and upskilling around AI risk. AI risk is now a major cause for concern. Just like you have your team set up to assess cybersecurity risk, you should also have a team also focused on AI threats, right? As part of the things that you should be looking at, because if someone could not bypass a control before, right? Like I've told you what I've imagined in my mind. It's easy for you to sort of, even though I'm not setting up in my own office laptop. You can also set it on your own personal laptop, and then run those prompts. Those prompts will give you step by step how to authenticate your path, how to do a lot of. Will just give you a roadmap, right, as to how to do the thing. That's from a threat actor perspective. So having audit professionals upskilling in the area of AI risk and threats that relates to artificial intelligence is now becoming very, very important, right? So from a technology and data angle, we saw that there was a proliferation of office collaboration tools. Like she was talking about, you can work from home, you can use Microsoft Teams, cloud platforms and all that. So the proliferation has increased the fact that the attack surface is now a lot more than we used to think it was, so, right? And the audit team started to try to get themselves acquainted. So your scope of audit then wasn't then the usual scope, right? That surface then increased. And then you have seen that transition to where you see auditors must then now assess how AI is integrated into your platforms. I always say that there are several entry points for AI into your organization, right? One of the entry points is either through embedded systems, or you buy a solution. For instance, you buy a fraud management solution. Someone can acquire a fraud management solution today, and the audit team maybe does not know that that fraud management solution has an AI component or AI part of it. Now, there is a responsibility for the audit team also to sort of inquire how that AI, what kind of AI algorithm is embedded in that solution, and how it will function. That should form, the entire course of the audit program. So you have AI entry points coming in as embedded solution. You acquire a core banking, you acquire some kind of CRM solution, and this imagine technologies that sort of embedded it into it. So one of the entry points, right? It's embedded technology. Another entry point is bring your own device or bring your own AI. A lot of us now we have ChatGPT on our phones, right? Some install it on your laptops, right? And there is the concern that maybe my CAE has given me a task that will take me 3 days, 4 days to complete. And then I can just decide to just go to ChatGPT, upload that data, and then I can have it done in 2 minutes, 3 minutes, or less than, right? And my CAE will be happy. Oh, wow, you've done the job very, very fast. But however, you have uploaded the company sensitive data into the internet. And the question is, what program do we have today in place to manage such concern, right? And these are some of the integrations that we're seeing, right? From your bring your own AI. First, we talked about embedded AI. Then you also have the bring your own AI. So the bring your own AI also is also introducing another form of risk into the environment. We're talking about AI integration. Do I have your attention, please? Undivided attention. And then the third component of how AI comes into your own environment is AI when you build. Right? So the audit team also has to have a focus to look at how you are building AI. There's an overall race, AI race, that is happening across the landscape, right? If you look at your maturity, if you assess your maturity, it could not be either the trough, or the peak, but right. But however, the audit team has to, have a lens focused on the build aspect. What component of every solution that is being built today has artificial intelligence, and what algorithm are they using? You need to understand the algorithm that they are being that is being used, and how it is being used. Now, from a digital trust perspective, AI protection is now a cause for concern, right? There are a lot of standards, an ISO standard that just came out on how you can actually, manage AI risk. So that framework has to be distilled into your own environment and embedded into your current risk management process, so that you can then know how to, ensure digital trust, and then the concept of resilience. Before now, we used to have scenario testing, tabletop exercise, right? But today we also have playbooks. These playbooks could be practiced in such a way that they have, AI program also embedded in it. So because AI is it's a two-edged sword. It's one of the things we're also going to be considering, right? And how can you make your resilience program a bit more proactive rather than being reactive? And the audit team can come by testing these playbooks, testing the playbooks and seeing the readiness across the playbook. So let's move to the next. I don't know if we have any question, yeah, the microphone.
Hello? Okay, so that was the presentation that you made. And okay, so most of us currently now, we have not developed in-house AI. We are using free AIs. They are all available.
Yes.
So, but you are raising an issue that if you are downloading from, or you are using the free AI, you are also exposing the institution to certain
risk.
AI.
Yes.
So, what application can you use? What application can you use to manage this process?
Okay, from a managed perspective, right? So it all starts from you having a framework in place. I've spoken about a lot of things, right? You need to have an AI framework, an AI risk management framework that helps you to consider how AI comes into your own environment and how your environment is exposed to AI, right? So for instance, your security team is supposed to have a data prevention solution that restricts some of these AI solutions from exposing your data out of your own environment. But there are several ways for you to sort of take your data out anyway, right? But I think the start point is to have a framework, more like you have your enterprise risk management framework. You have your AI protection framework integrated into that same process, just like you have your ISO 27001 and you have your BCMS integrated into that same process. You can also have that integrated in such a way that you have an holistic approach into how AI is introduced into your own environment, and then how do you, mitigate it, because one context may not one solution may not fit all. But I think the first consideration is you understand that, and then you understand what AI assets do you guys have currently today, or what are the various ways AIs can enter into your own environment. Keep an inventory of that, and then have relevant mitigants by discussing with your control team. Like I've talked about a data loss prevention solution. He has talked about having security solutions that are more AI enabled. So what we are seeing is that we are using AI these days to fight AI, using artificial intelligence to fight artificial intelligence, because AI is making the cybersecurity space a bit more volatile and unpredictable. So I don't know if I addressed a bit of your question. Okay. Yeah.
Do you want to finish up? Because you say you want to add something, or should I go ahead?
You also add some point.
Okay.
Yes. 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 So yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, so like what to be said, you can have a lot of security tools, right? For instance, he spoke about an endpoint detection. You can have you can have an MDR, EDR that looks at your various endpoints and see if you have rogue things installed. So if you have a freemium AI solution installed in a laptop in your organization, it's a concern, because if I have, for instance, ChatGPT, even though it has its morals turned on, right? You can still your employees could also still upload data into that. So if you have that XDRs and MDRs installed, it could sort of either stop this from being installed, or and then the installation process also too. Someone is not supposed to have access to be able to install freemiums into his own laptops, right? And then from a web perspective, where you can just run the URL, so you could have WAF and your firewalls, like you talked about, identify these things and also block them before they actually happen. So those are the procedures. Well, you have a whole lot of the laundry list of them, right? And maybe we don't have all the time to go through all that. Are you crying about stopping me, man? Okay.
No, I'm not. You just pause. I'm not stopping you. I'm not stopping you. We want to have a photo session because our chief host, he's been with us, but he wants to leave now. So that's why I say just put a pause to it, and then quickly after the photo session, we'll go back. It's not AI photo session. It's a real one. Please, let's come in. Let's settle down. Let's settle down. Please, let's come in and settle down. Colleagues, please, can we come in? The session is over. Photography is over. We need to manage time properly. Please. Colleagues, please, can we come inside the hall? Please, can we just be brisk about this? Okay, so Ripson will continue, but I want to plead, let him do his presentation. Then we can ask our questions so that we know how to manage our time. Thank you. Ripson.
Yeah. All right. Just to kick off from where we had stopped, right? I think the last question that we had was around managing freemiums, free AI solution that is being introduced into our own environment. And what we have said is, from the aspect of you implementing frameworks to developing specialized AI governance policies, to having security solutions that are more AI adaptive, that would allow you, respond and address some of this risk. And so in response to that, too, I'll probably have one of my colleagues also, during the Q&A session, also add his own comments, sort of buttress what we have said. Now, from what we have seen, in terms of understanding the risk that has happened across the cybersecurity landscape, right? The key vectors or the key catalysts for this problem, the key actors are some of the things that we are seeing here. Yeah, we have phishing and ransomware, right? Phishing can come in several ways. Phishing can even come in the form of man in the middle attack. Phishing could come in the form of a deep fake. Phishing could come in the form of you having a QRD code, right? And then you would have also to vulnerability, exploitation of current vulnerabilities of your own assets, information assets. The question is, how is this currently managed across your enterprise? And then you have supply chain and third-party risk, which is a real concern. Today we'll be talking about open banking, and open banking is going to sort of either eliminate this risk a lot more, right? And I think what should also be top of mind and top concern for CAEs is to look at the lens. What lens are you using to look at your third parties? Because you have a lot of integrations with fintechs today, one-to-one integration. And when open banking comes on board, you're going to have it more like a neural connection or a web of connection, and it becomes a bit complicated. But you should have a handhold on your third parties, have an inventory of who they are, and have an ongoing continuous risk assessment process that helps you to manage risk across that area. And then one of the very prevalent one that always sort of pops up is the misconfiguration. Whether it is you have an on-prem environment or a cloud environment, some of the very basic one is misconfiguration. So you set up a bot, for instance, and because of some human error, it's been it's not set up correctly, and someone comes and hijacks that bot and is able to do something else with it. So misconfiguration is a core issue, and human error, right? These are some of the catalysts. And we know that there's been a lot of issues. So if you go to the internet today and type cybersecurity incidences in Nigeria, man, you will see a lot of things. 20 billion, 30 billion here and there, right? So based on our assessment, when we looked across the industry and our experience and exposure to things that have been happening, these are some of the catalysts that we have seen, threat vectors that like, we know that sort of is causing all this. So in terms of consideration, let's look at the next slide so we can run very quickly. Now, in terms of considerations, we have developed 8 key considerations for auditors, or you could call it imperatives, things that you should consider while going back to your team. The first is, what governance model is the cybersecurity team currently practicing? You know, you have to look at it very closely. Look at their responsibility, look at their competence, look at the reporting line, look at how they are set up. You know, you need to look at it clearly, right? And then the power of people. The power of the people is really, very important. Your talent, you need to sort of expose your talent, motivate your talent, either from a remuneration perspective, from a promotion perspective, are things that you need to consider, because the audit team has to catch up with the business, right? In terms of skill, remuneration, promotion, you know, things that are top of mind for those employees to help them to stay and focus on this trend, right? And then I've talked about embedded trust, right? So my colleague is also going to shed more light on how KPM is also supporting our clients in that climate. Then I've talked about the AI race. There's a lot of race happening. You know, everyone wants to show off their AI competence, right? Across, you see hyperscalers also. You see Google, you see Amazon and all that. They are also competing and racing to show that they are top. So that there's a lot of investment that is going in, right? And some of these things are things that we should replicate within our own environment. So within this consideration, there are outcomes also that we should also look at. Some of our investment into our people may not be considered from an ROI perspective, rather from an ROF perspective. So there are different considerations, because the AI conversation has introduced other outcomes. Because if you look at it from an ROI perspective, some investment you want to make in your people, right, and your infrastructure may not make sense. But because you want to, you know, join the AI race and you want to do it safely, you have to make considerable investment in your people and your infrastructure. And that would then come within the concept of an ROF, right? ROF perspective, investment of the future, right? And then if you look at the third one, is over the years we've talked about building intelligent platforms, leveraging platforms to, you know, support your audit process, augment your audit process. There has to be small digital bots, guardian bots, right? Either from a low code, no code perspective that could augment the current tasks that you are doing to sort of help you meet the overall demand. So platform intelligence is really very, very key. Digital identity also is really very important. You must harness identity across your landscape. Sometimes you see that the identity from a core banking perspective is different from what you have from a CRM perspective. So you could have one thing sitting on one CRM. The identity is not harmonized across board. So that identity harmonization, right, is becoming an imperative. So you're able to know when someone has done something and correlate logs, right, if you have a harmonized identity. And then also, we have spoke about this a lot, the ever-evolving role of an auditor. You must see the audit practice as not just done, or the audit skill as not just done. You must see it as a muscle that you are trying to build, continuously build, right? You must see the audit process or the audit practice as a muscle, not something that is done, but it's a muscle that you are trying to build continuously. It has to be like a needle you are trying to push, constantly push, right? So that wraps it up. I don't know if you have more questions. I will address some of your questions, and I have my colleague also come and chip in some of them. Yeah, okay. Microphone.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for the presentation. So you mentioned that Okay, if you want to clap, please, you can clap.
All right, thank you very much. Yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned that. Okay, so you mentioned that there are ISO standards on managing AI risk. So do you want to specify some of these standards that you're referring to, and to what Shegun mentioned earlier? I think it's just more about putting some governance in place for the AI. The type of AI that you want to bring into the organization. I may be able to do chat GPT or whatever. I may be able to use any free AI or anything on my personal device, but when it comes to the organization, I think what organizations are doing now is determining what they want to use and putting controls in place, or putting AI policies in place, or AI risk management policies to say this you can use for anything for the organization, this you cannot use. So, and that speaks to what my colleague mentioned earlier. But for those standards that you mentioned, can you specify some of these key standards that we want to look at, the ISO standard?
Yeah. So you have the ISO, the 400 serials that relates to managing AI risk. You have the NIST. Yes. You have the NIST. You have the NIST CSF, right? And you have specific publications around the NIST that sort of speaks to that. And then you have the NIST. I think the NIST AI risk management framework also too. These are some of the frameworks that you could harness. So, but I also have Tumi, who is our associate director within the practice, also come and shed more light on some of the things that we are doing. Like you've said, AI governance is part of his core. So I'll give the mic to Kumi to sort of shed bit more light.
All right, thank you very much for listening to us so far. So, artificial intelligence has now become it has become mainstream, right? And because of that, how we deal with it also really needs to evolve very quickly. And the lady that spoke earlier said a lot, right? But at KPMG, what we do, we have this framework that we then operationalize called KPMG Trusted Artificial Intelligence Framework, right? It focuses on three. It looks at it in three lenses. One, how do we derive value from artificial intelligence? How do we make it human-centric? And then how do we make it fair? Right? Now, from those three things, okay, they can't hear me. Okay, I have to okay, it seems better now. Okay, KPMG has this framework, KPMG Trusted Artificial Intelligence Framework, right? Looks at the enterprise adoption of artificial intelligence through three lenses. One, how do we make it fair for the organization, right? How do we make it human-centric? So whether it's our customers we're dealing with or the people, right? And now if we break those three things down again further, we have another about 8, if I recall. I'll just double check, right? Part of it is transparency, right? And explainability. You have to be able to explain what artificial intelligence has done, or the capability to be able to explain it, what has happened, needs to be in place, right? So even as we go from a framework to operationalizing what artificial intelligence does, those two are very important. Number one, is it fair? Is it the use cases that we've set out to achieve? Are they fair? What people will be able to achieve with artificial intelligence, are those things fair? Can we explain it? Is it auditable, right? And part of, if we start exploring that further, things like, okay, when we now look at the policy lens again, should people just be able to open ChatGPT and post things from the core banking directly into it? The clear answer is no. So the next question will be, and that's coming from policy, is how do we prevent that, right? So we look at the entire landscape. What are the possibilities, right? What are the data sources, system of records that we have today? Maybe you have Microsoft 365. What do you even have as data assets, right, that people can leverage or can try to take advantage of, right? all of that is where we now build security around. And part of, if I'll just mention one, part of that is what we call the data privacy. Because there's really no artificial intelligence without data. It's data we use to train artificial intelligence, right? If it's the organization's data now, one of the primary concerns should be how do we secure this data? So data security then comes to mind very strongly. And we are supporting a number of organizations, from policy to data security to ensuring that we keep certain classes of data confidential and private. So data privacy. I mean, maybe one or two people in the organization in the room, we're already doing some things with them, right? So it's just to mention that it's holistic. There are different things people can do. There's Claude, ChatGPT, Copilot, or even one that is built internally. But it starts from the policy. What should be possible, what should not be possible. Once we know the things that should not be possible, we then go about securing it together. That's the addition I wanted to add. Okay.
Okay. No, I have the mic here.
Okay.
Okay. One of the things that you said drove cyber breaches in 2024 was misconfiguration.
Yes.
My thinking is that misconfiguration cannot be unintentional, because I expect that any good bank, any organization worth itself, when configuring, should have a maker checker in the process, and after the configuration there should be like a pilot test to ensure that what you've configured, because this year a lot of banks actually had vulnerabilities that predispose them to huge losses because of misconfiguration.
Yes.
So I still strongly, I don't know, you can prove me wrong, that people that configured may have done those things intentionally because of the benefits they expect to derive.
Yeah, so it could come in that way. Also, it could also come in the in terms of the amount of knowledge that they have. It could be intentional. It could be unintentional because of the overall knowledge within the group, right? I can also remember some couple of years back when I was in a bank and we're setting up a bot, right? They set up the bot and the bot was running, and some of the configuration sensitive data around the username and the password was set up without it being masked, and it was running across. So anyone who gained access into where that sandbox is, you probably would just see the username and password. And if you're going to have remote access by that time, you could also re-engineer that bot to do some other things. And if it has privileges to post and do things, and it becomes... So I think at that time, because it went through the entire change management process, right? But the overall knowledge at that time, wasn't... it wasn't really... so it could be either from a clear knowledge gap perspective, or it could be from someone who is more knowledgeable, then exploiting the ignorance of the others and then allowing that to sort of use that to bypass control. But I also agree with you, there has to be that either dual control system, something that comes back to sort of recheck, and that's why the internal control system, right, either from a team perspective, from a people perspective, has to be up to speed with some of this, is because they're supposed to be looking at it on a regular basis, right? They have to be up to speed with what has been set up, how it has been set up, query it, and like also to me it's talked about, there has to be some clarity as to the auditability of each system. So that's my take. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to respond to what he said in terms of misconfigurations and the intentions behind it.
Yes.
The truth of the matter is, if you look at the IT system today, a lot of people that we have on the jobs, honestly speaking, a lot of them are not even experienced.
Yes.
So the experienced people have either jackpot or they're not available. So the crops of the guys that we bring from university now and you just put there to do stuff a lot of them don't have experience to be able to do it. Then from my lens, looking at the IT systems, applications, a lot of these systems do not even have maker checker, and that's the truth. If you look at so many things in IT right now, there's no maker checker. So even if you try to build any form of maker checker, you're building it on a system that does not necessarily speak to where the so-called either scripts or whatever it is you have configured is going to be applied.
Yes.
They are not in sync. So as auditors, we have to consciously make sure that that maker checker is in place.
Yes.
And to be honest, a lot of the maker checkers you put in place right now are either, they're not even system driven. They're either manual. You have to then make sure that you say, okay, no, after you do this. So they're more or less like built into process,
Yes.
as against built into the application.
Yes.
So there's a whole lot of disconnect.
Yes.
So for IT auditors, we have to consciously make sure that every process in the IT department, you're building, maker checker into it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so where I'll come in to quickly add to the concern that he raised, that's Mobishe, and then what Larry was able to add to it is that the maker checker seems to be like the traditional, and we are still emphasizing that despite that we know that the landscape has changed. Honestly, according to what the keynote address gave us, there is a need now for the audit to start moving away from the rear view, and I think a lot of us have realized that, such that the import of our work is to actually be one of those checkers. Additionally, that's what we have seen, so that it becomes a total zero trust, like we have said. So, yes, part of the people that we have taken on board to school, the people that report to us, will still come back to you traditionally, that, but this is compliance beat.
Yes.
But it's our responsibility to now know that, let us assume that compliance is not even there.
Yes.
And then plus zero trust. So that's just to add up to what Larry has said. We must see ourselves in the system. There is any project, enterprise project that is ongoing. I've heard comments that find yourself in the process. Don't say we weren't invited. Drag a seat and sit on the table, and then nominate somebody to be representative. If we don't sign off on this project, it's not going on live.
Yeah. Just to add to that also too. Yeah, just to buttress what he has said. I know we know something they call OTP, right? Do we consider that as part of that's 2FA also too? Because yes. So what we have also experienced, or what my team has also exploited, is we have the capability to oftentimes bypass the OTP, right? Things are changing, right? So I think like he said, you have got to be the third eye, and be more involved, and also evolve also as the audit process also evolving. As much as the draw control system, compensating control systems are really important, and they should form the base or the foundation, the first element or the first building block for any development, right? We should also introduce our own self in terms of commitment and being involved and understanding what kind of controls are sort of implemented, because some of all these things also have new vulnerabilities that have also been introduced. I don't know how much more time we have. Yeah.
No further question? Can I? All right. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
My own question is on a third-party risk.
Yes.
It's one of the issues that you raised.
Yes.
In a more practical way, how do you think we can deal with it? And I will tell you why. One of the requirements under the cyber security framework.
Sorry, put it close.
Cyber security framework is that auditors must audit all the third parties.
Yes.
So the issue is that today, my bank will go and audit Interswitch or NIPS, for example. Another bank goes. So those people are complaining, say that if we continue to do this, we will not be able to have time to do our job. So how can we deal with this? Because these issues we deal with all these third parties every day. They have access to our systems one way or the other. We integrate. How do we go and audit them? That all of us have to go and be doing it one by one to be able to meet the requirement under the cyber security framework.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah, yeah. So I think one of the ways to do it is because we can develop a framework that governs how third party integration should happen, and we are going into the open banking era, and so, but just part of the accelerators that KPMG is supporting the open banking team, that's the CBN and NIBS with, right, currently. So that guidance as to telling all banks to say every time we want to assess third-party risk, these are the core elements or the core domain areas that should be covered. For instance, if it's a fintech, are they on-prem or cloud? You know, do they use AI solutions? So those components should then form part of the core guidance. And then if the CBN also can also, you know, then provide a standard, like you have the SOC standard that is being used globally, introduce some standard like that, that will allow, you know, maybe Big Four should come, audit them, and then whenever you are asking for their own, you know, you then get that validation. I know some of us also are also supporting fintechs, right? Not fintechs, sorry, banks, right? As regards this area, and what we do is to look at third parties from three lenses. We look at it from the AML perspective. We look at it from data privacy, and then we also look at it from the ISO. That's the overall cybersecurity framework, and that cybersecurity framework is also then distilled into your governance practice. We also look at your architecture for the fintech, right? We'll also look at their solutioning also too. Then if they also have elements like we've also discussed around AI, we also want to know what they are doing and see how clear and how auditable that is. Because if your data is being exposed to a third party and then they have some of these tools that they are not sort of managing properly, it could also introduce some secondary risk to your own climate. So that's part of the things that we know we are doing in terms of managing or supporting people around third party. But what I think, the approach, I think that your team can come up and provide a paper, maybe a white paper to the CBN, is to ask for some industry guidance, right, from a framework perspective, and then sort of institutionalize some certification that should be obtained when you have an audit, and that will sort of standardize it across board. Because I think it's a major challenge, really, because every time we want to ask InterSwitch, for instance, it's trying to say, no, Bank B has come, right, Bank A has come, right, and it's a challenge for us also too, even from a partner perspective.
Okay. Okay. So yeah. I think it's part of the issue. It's part of the issue that we came late into the game. I mean, Nigeria, maybe Africa. Absolutely, we came late into the game. That's why we are having this issue. But it's not too late for us to move in. And I want to respond to one issue that you know, for us today in Nigerian banks, we segregate our guys into branch audit or head office auditor,
yes,
IT auditor, what's the latest one? Investigation. My thinking, is that we should immediately have it at the back of our mind that all those guys must be exposed to IT-related issues.
Yes.
Or yes, we are killing those three other guys and we are concentrating on the IT. There should be nothing like IT auditor. Everybody is an IT auditor.
Yes.
And that we should I don't know how to
re-engineer the
say
mind.
that thinking has to start, you know, that thinking. And that's why our academy in the IKB, we set up an academy, and most of the resources will be devoted to AI and cyber security related.
Yes.
We should be able to do that. And even Institute of Internal Auditor, they are organizing a training session, international training session in July. I recommend it for most of us if you can attend. There's going to be a great discussion about cybersecurity and AI. Now, finally, going to Nike's comment, I understand her perspective perfectly, but the issue I'm raising is that there are three levels of bringing AI into your system.
Yes.
It's either inbuilt, it's either off-shelf,
yes,
it's either free.
Yes.
Now, I'm taking of the free one. How do I know that this information you have provided to the board, to the ESCO, is not AI driven, it's not AI inputted? I'm still going to take that discussion to the international conference. But I'm thinking on my head. How do I know? Because you come and everybody clap for you, blah blah blah, but nobody knows either you have downloaded the information, either you have exposed the details, the data, of the institution to AI.
Yes.
Yeah. So I want to know.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just for discussion. Thank you.
Well, if I'm to respond to that, yeah. So if I'm to respond to that, right? I think from a mitigation approach, we can only mitigate this risk to a certain level, and also to the generative AI component is something I think we need to early adopt it and find a way to integrate into our process and do it safely. You understand what I mean by that? So the organization should also invest in so that I talked about various AI outcomes, because banks today will only consider ROIs, right? Return on investment. So they want to know how much this solution will bring, right? But there's also a return on employee engagement, right? Which is a new one, because AI is also introducing that. For instance, if you're using Outlook, is there an ROI around Outlook? I cannot even directly say this is an ROI around Outlook. So we need to also have our own generative AI component that is inbuilt inside our own environment, because we cannot stop people from using generative AI, right? So what he has said is a very valid thing. The employee needs to enjoy working with an organization, and so AI needs to also help them augment their performance. So if you're not providing it for them, they will find a way, one way or the other, to expose your data to the internet. So the best way to go about it then is to start this conversation of how do we then, invest in other AI outcomes that are different from ROIs. Look at investment in the future in terms of skills. Look at return on employee engagement, because you want your employee to be happy working with you. You've got to build your own internal AI, generative AI system, more like Copilot, right? That can actually help your employees to, expose your data, but they're exposing it in a more safer way to something that is contained within your own or built locally within your own environment. That's part of my response. But some of these prompt statements you have made, I'm not sure we can sort of mitigate all the risk. Right, because even if when you then have the Copilot built internally into your own environment, you still have some people who will still stubbornly want to use other AI models, right? So I think it's something that we have to learn to live with as we go. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Mine is a bit of advisory, and I'm taking a cue from what Shegun has said.
Your mic.
Hello, can you hear me? All right. I said it's a bit of advisory, and I'm taking it from what my colleague has said. We all have maker, checker, maker everywhere. But I've only seen few instances where cyber fraud has been attempted on a bank, and that cyber fraud was prevented from happening. Only a few instances. So my advice is for us as operators and for you as consultants to upscale ourselves to the level of the cyber criminals, because even when we call consultants after the fraud has happened, they come to review, but they don't really see what happened. They just say, well, it probably this was what happened, this was what has not happened. Yes, but to be able to put a nail on it and say this was what specifically happened, this was how it happened, consultants have not been able to do that.
Well, you want to say something?
Okay, so my question is, what would you suggest? So I know that I think auditors don't really dig deep when it comes to coding pipelines, for instance. And even though there are processes in place, for instance, who can push the code to production, and also you have testers, and you have a peer review, and also automatic testings. But then for auditors, because I'm not an engineer, how do you actually review that process of that coding itself? Because I feel like some of the misconfiguration comes from there as well. So what would you suggest is something that auditors can do in reviewing the code pipeline, basically? Because I know that there are certain what would I call it? There are certain baseline in terms of coding, but then I can only review the baseline that I understand. But digging deep into it, what would you suggest?
But I think you already have the answer to that, because even he has alluded to the answer, and so he has also contributed, because I think the overall thing is sort of investment in yourself and how your organization also invests in you, right? Writing more certifications and doing a lot more research, right? So I allow Tumi to.
All right, thank you. I'll just try to address the last three questions also, right? Maybe starting from the last one. Again, we are supporting a couple of organizations along that line, because guess what? That's part of where some of the fraud or some of the challenges come from, right? How the applications are even pushed into a production environment, right? Before people can now start exploiting it. So maybe just permit me to take your question and maybe the second to the last thread as I'm answering. Without the right technology in place, that's even maybe listening to everything that is going on at a particular time, right? And this to the second to the last question. Without the right technology in place, that's listening to all the network connection, right? Where are they originating from? Even the internal network, where did it flow to? There's no way to say, okay, this is the flow of the attack. If an organization doesn't have that in place, there's they can only say, oh, maybe this or maybe that. So one of the base investment is capabilities to even understand the flow, even if it's a legitimate transaction or legitimate flow from a customer. From the customer's phone, mobile banking phone, for example, how did it go all the way into the core banking and back? The network flow, including the data flow. And there are a number of applications that play in that space, right? Without mentioning any name. Either at the network level or at the application level, and then they can be correlated that, okay, this was what happened. Even if it's an illegitimate actor. So that's to the second to the last. Now to your question. Interestingly, I have a slightly, my opinion about that is, again, leverage technology. You wouldn't necessarily know everything, but there are technologies that will tell you, for example, that, okay, this particular code that's about to go into production, the testers have not tested it enough, right? The test coverage is not sufficient. They've only tested 30% of what they should test. Some of those solutions, again, without mentioning or